Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. Happy Draftmas Eve to all who celebrate. Going to be an interesting show today, kind of a mellow one because it's 8 o'clock p.m. PST and we're just waiting for the draft to happen. But I wanted to get on here, talk to you guys, talk to my guys, just kind of see what what's going on with everybody. So Arjun, Alex are here with me. Alex, how are you, man?
Doing good. Of course, you wanted a 8 p.m. PT show, and you get two East Coasters who are in here for the witching hours. So happy to be on.
Yeah, well, if it makes you feel any better, I didn't invite either of you.
Well,
it's all good. Arjun, how you doing, man?
Doing good. Just wrapped up finals, so officially done with school for the year. Happy to just go into the draft with nothing to worry about except football. So it's kind of a nice feeling. The only thing is I've been I didn't mean to curse. I've been moving all day, from my one house to my next place. So it's been it's nice to just hop on here and kind of rewind and just relax for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex and I are unhappy though because you finished your finals in April.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they just don't do school in Michigan, or how's that work? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I mean, Michigan ends so early. I mean, I'm coming back to California and all my friends at UCI, UCLA, all of them are still going until June. And so it's just I'm gonna be home really by myself. So as much as I like ending school early, it's just the rest of my friends are still in school for at least another couple of weeks. So it's just a trade-off, but I'm okay with it, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to pick, I'd rather be out of school than in school. So I guess you don't have it too bad. But we're still in school. So Alex and I sort of hate you right now. I really had nothing planned for the show today. It was kind of a vibe show. Talk to everybody in the chat. If you want to force us to do a mock draft, maybe we can do one. If you have questions, let's do that. But I haven't spoken to you guys about the draft in a while. It's either been about free agency or stuff like a month before the draft. So where are you guys at right now when it comes to the Chargers and 21? The big thing seems to be, you got to take a wide receiver at 21. But I don't really feel that the Chargers are going to do that. It's currently the betting favorite. The Chargers taking a wide receiver at 21, or at least with their first pick. So where are you guys at with that right now?
Yeah, I'll start. So I think so. I'm okay if they take a receiver and edge. Those are the two positions. If all of the positions are there, I want them to take those two. Those are premium positions. You need to always be drafting those. You're gonna have to plan for 2024 when one of Keenan and Mike and Joey and Khalil or Khalil are not going to be on the roster. I'm okay if they take one at 21. My thing is just looking at the draft, looking at the prospects. You've done your videos about it. Alex has talked about it. There just is no receiver outside of Quentin Johnston that fits the physical profile of what Tom Telesco does typically with the draft. If you look at his career weighted average, if you look at just his top 100 picks, he typically goes for bigger receivers. That's not what Jordan Addison is. That's not what Zay Flowers is. Jackson Smith-Njigba, he kind of fits that profile, but he's basically 6 foot. So he's a little bit under, honestly, what Telesco would go for. Quentin Johnston is that guy, right? So if you want a receiver, he does seem like the, prototypical guy. So again, I want them to take a receiver. I'd be okay if they take a receiver. I just don't see them doing it because none of them really match their profile. And then I just think Johnston's a little bit of a reach at 21 based on how his stock has trended. But, any edge, honestly, I'm fine with. Will McDonald is probably the only one where I give a little bit of pause because he's going to be 24. But other than that, if LVN or Van Ness, Murphy, or Nolan Smith all fall to 21, I think those would be home run picks and would be very good for where they're, based on positional value and their draft stock right now.
Yeah, I would agree. Alex, you were a pretty big Quentin Johnston fan. I never really got your official 1, 2, 3 ranking. So is he still wide receiver 1 for you, or was he ever?
He was, and then I watched the Kansas State game, so now he's 2.
Okay.
But I kind of went back and forth on that a little bit, but I have Njigba 1 and him 2.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. So okay, this is what I've been struggling with wide receivers is that, especially when we first did our first rankings episode, Jordan Addison was my wide receiver 5, but he was my second highest graded wide receiver. So how have you been managing placing these guys? Because there's no true guy. everyone wants to label these top 3 guys, a first round pick and give them a first round grade. But I know these guys were kind of more not generational, but like once every few years. But like Jamar Chase gets a first round grade, like Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, these guys get first round grades. Garrett Wilson maybe gets a first round grade, depending on how you feel about him. He was, I think, your wide receiver 1, ended up being my wide receiver 1. And I just feel so much more comfortable about them. So, like, how have you managed ranking these receivers? And do you have like a cluster of guys you feel okay with the Chargers taking at 21?
Cluster of guys that I feel okay with the Chargers taking. I think it's 2 of them, and I think it's Njigba and Johnson.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, this will get to the Zay conversation. I would be fine with them taking Zay Flowers or Jordan Addison, but like they're such outliers to the size profile. If you watch Jordan Addison's film, like he consistently kind of struggles when he does get pressed. It's just there, and so for me, that's like the big thing with him. And I don't know. I think they could take him. Obviously, they have the Chris Beatty connection there. But for me, the way that I'm leaning with how this pick's going to go is tight end. I do think that it's probably going to end up being Michael Mayer. If I had to bet money on it today, Arjun accused me of putting money on Quentin Johnston over at FanDuel.
It was the Alex Insdorf syndicate that was moving the markets on FanDuel.
Dang.
But yeah, for me, I guess I would kind of cope myself into being okay with Zay Flowers or Jordan Addison at the end of the day. But for me, like, I just think the value of wide receiver is in round 2 or round 3 if you want to go for any of those players. Like, I would prefer Jonathan Mingo in round 2. Yeah. I would prefer Marvin Mims in round 3 over those options.
Yeah, I even think when you get to round 3, let's say, or even round 4, then maybe Telesco can kind of play with those different prototype profiles and the size of the wide receivers, because like you're not going to get, every guy is 6'3", runs a 4'3". Like it doesn't happen at that point in the draft. Although there are some guys in the draft who can sort of do that. So maybe they'll start playing with that there. But in the first round, yeah, I don't really buy it. Arjun, have you placed any bets on the Chargers to kind of, mitigate your feelings if they take a player you don't like or something? Because I have placed a bet and I have money on the Chargers taking Michael Mayer.
Yeah, so I emotionally hedge during the season. Like I'll bet the other side. Like I did it so much this season. But during the draft, it is, I'm not betting to emotionally hedge anything. I'm doing like what I actually think is going to happen. So I've bet 2 things. I've bet the Chargers to take a tight end at like 3-1. And then I've bet the Chargers to draft a cornerback at 29-1. So obviously, if they take a cornerback, I'd be ecstatic. That would be a great bet for me.
Yeah.
But obviously, I have a larger position on Chargers to take a tight end. It is also based in the theory that I think both Mayer and Kincaid will be there at 21. Both of those guys' draft props are sitting at 21.5 and higher. And so I don't see, because the Packers went up from 15 to 13, I take them off the tight end list because, I don't think they would have felt the need to jump the Patriots and the Jets to draft a tight end. I don't see the Lions taking one after what happened with TJ Hawkinson. The Bucks could take one, but they have a huge hole at left tackle, huge hole at quarterback, or I don't know about quarterback, but like, they have holes outside of tight end. And then, it's just like, it makes so much sense for what Kellen Moore does in his offense. And I think like, we just know, like, and I put this out the other day, Michael Mayer's physical profile compared to the weighted average of what the Chargers look for in their tight ends, it is so close. Like it is their 40-yard, their 10-yard splits, their height, their weight. It is so freaking close. And so I think not that I think he's a great prospect and that's not who I want them to pick. I just think based on what Telesco's shown in the past, I think he would fit the profile of what Kellen Moore wants, what Telesco looks for in tight ends. And tight end is the one position that the Chargers haven't drafted in the first round yet. So
yes, that is the one. That is
that trend, So I don't want it to happen. I don't think it would be a great pick personally. I think that is what's going to happen, and that's why those are the only 2 bets I've placed.
Yeah, it's hard to bet against Michael Mayer being the favorite. Like I don't know who else you could pick to say that they're the favorite unless you can guarantee me that one of these edge rushers is going to fall.
Yeah.
And you can't. Mayer is likely to be there. Like if someone takes Kincaid, if someone takes like if the Packers take Mayer, then it's over, right? But one of those two tight ends is going to be there. So, and then you talk about the Notre Dame connection, being a solid player, a sound player, a productive player. Like people are forgetting that Michael Mayer is very solid as a receiving option statistically. Like I know people aren't super enthused with the idea because he's not a speedy wide receiver, but like you look at contested catch, you look at yards per route run, you name it. Like he is a good receiving tight end. And if Kellen Moore, who had the #1 red zone offense last year, says that's how we get better, then I think you have to do that. And you can't have your offense trot out 5 really good offensive linemen and then complete liabilities at blocking tight end. Like that's just going to kill your offensive scheme all day long. And I'm not saying that Michael Mayer is going to go out and block Max Crosby, but you watch that first game against the Raiders and the line looks pretty good. And then just whether it's McKitty, whether it's Everett, these guys are just getting banged up and beat up because they just are not holding up because, that's not really Everett's thing as is. And then McKitty kind of went backwards last year until he started to get better towards the end of the season. So, if Kellen Moore says, hey, we can fix our red zone offense because Mayer's a great end zone option, a red zone option for us, great. If we can fix our offense because he can block better than anything we have, great. Like I would understand why they would take him. So yeah, he's the player that I have money on. And so I would understand why they would do it. And if they take a tight end and no one's happy, but it's Mayer, at least I'm happy.
Yeah, I don't like to extrapolate too many things from Tom Telesco press conferences, but the big comment he did say about tight end was blocking and receiving, right? And he meant that sarcastically.
In jest, yeah.
But I mean, that is kind of what Michael Mayer would bring to a 12 personnel, run package Kellen Moore scheme right at this point. So, and you talk about yards per route run, like I do think Kincaid is I don't know if I would say much better receiver. He is the best receiving tight end in this class. But as you said, yards per route run is 4.44 to 4.42, right, in favor of Michael Mayer. So, I mean, it's really close kind of at the end of the day there. I don't think there's like a huge difference in athleticism between the two at this point, especially considering Dalton Kincaid and the back and the fact that he is older. So for me, I kind of put Michael Mayer into my tier where I would understand the pick. I would be fine with it, but because of the positional value and because you can find a Sam Laporta later on, because you can find a Tucker Kraft later on, I just wouldn't be crazy about the pick.
Yeah, the one thing with Mayer, I think that he does do well. He did run a pretty. Oh, his 40 time wasn't great, but it was above average. It was in the 66th percentile. One of the things that Kevin Cole, who's analytics guy on Twitter, he found that 40-yard time and 10-yard splits are pretty good indicators of like who's going to become a good tight end. So, 4.740, 66th percentile, 1.61 10-yard dash or 10-yard split. Those are like pretty solid numbers. Like they are above average. They aren't great, but they're above average. So he does kind of meet some of the thresholds to be a good tight end. But again, the problem for people who maybe aren't as like familiar with like tight end development curves, it just takes a little bit for tight ends to develop. Like it's not out of the question that Mayer could be an instant contributor year one, give you 700 yards, 60 receptions. But typically with tight ends, even if they're a round one guy, like their ceiling is probably like 500 yards or like 400 yards. Kyle Pitts is obviously an anomaly. He's a generational tight end. Mayer could be like that, but just on average, if he's going in the 20s, he's probably not going to be that generational type guy. So you just have to kind of lower your expectations for him. I know since he's a first round pick, a lot of people will be expecting him to make this huge impact year one, but just, tight ends do take a little bit to develop, which is why I'm kind of not in favor of it because, just because of that development curve. But I understand why they do it, and it kind of just fits what Tom Telesco would do.
Why do you think there is such that development curve for tight ends? Like, is it just they go to bad teams because bad teams pick them in the first round and there's a bad situation, or something about the position? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question because I think like when you try to measure like a tight end success, you're doing it with like receiving yards. It's not like a blocking thing, which, it could be the physicality from college to the pros, but I do think it's just like their ability to like separate versus college linebackers versus NFL safeties and NFL linebackers. Like the pace is just so much quicker. Where even though like they might not be that fast in college, like not being that fast is still probably being like pretty fast compared to the college players. But when you go up against like real NFL players, like I think that athleticism, like it doesn't translate over as easily. Finding like soft spots to sit in zones, creating separation versus man, those are things that take time to develop. So it is a tough thing to really quantify. Like obviously, if I was doing a whole research project, I'd look at like deeper things, but I think it has to do with like athleticism and just making that jump between separating versus college players and NFL players.
Yeah. Alrighty. Quick question from Kendall Larson. Then, what are you guys' dream picks at this point? I feel like we sort of feel like edge rusher is kind of that, but I mean, is it a corner for anybody? Alex, what do you think?
Bijan Robinson.
Fair enough. Okay. Okay. So Arjun put him in the not happy category. I respect the brand. I totally understand. And it's a pretty clear argument, right? Like non-premium position might not even translate to any increase in wins. There's so much worry about it. You're probably jettisoning him after 4 or 5 years. If it's the first round in 5 years, the Chargers clearly aren't exactly valuing running back a ton, although they did take Melvin Gordon in the first round. But in terms of money, it's never been a big money position for them. Alex really likes him. Arjun likes the player.
Yeah, I love the player.
Yeah, absolutely. Just not for the Chargers and the numbers there. So, okay. Other than Bijan Robinson, who we took, and we had to take him in our first mock because we literally would have gotten fired, I think. Alex, who's your other dream pick?
If Bijan's not there, it's kind of harder than I really thought.
It really feels like that this year, doesn't it?
Yeah. Quentin Johnston.
Yeah, it's funny because he's my, I think, wide receiver 4. But I think he'd do the most with the Chargers, over some of the other guys that are potentially outliers. And he does have a skill set that I know can contribute and be unique to what the Chargers don't have right now.
I'll clarify that. Like the edges that we are not expecting to fall, like if Nolan Smith's somehow available 21, like take him. I don't think Nolan Smith's going to be available. I don't think he's going to be available 21. He probably is not available after the 10th pick, frankly. But if like Miles Murphy or some of those guys fall too, then like I would take them over like a Quentin Johnston. But I don't think that they're going to be there, and then you're probably differentiating between like Will McDonald versus Quentin Johnston, and that's kind of where I would go with a premium wide receiver that can develop over an older edge rusher. But yeah, so that's kind of how I feel about that. But yeah, for me, the way that Steven kind of put it today, and this is sort of why it sort of took my brain with the Chargers too, is that Steven said on Twitter, he was like, if you're going to draft Quentin Johnston, you want to draft into a team where he's not going to have to do too many things like on the outside, like catching jump balls on the boundary. And the Chargers are kind of the team where that works, right? Like you're not going to have to. You have Mike Williams, right? At least for this first year of Quentin Johnston, and you can kind of ease him in to that role. Obviously, a lot of things that you have to work on, and I would probably maybe prefer drafting again like Marvin Mims in round 3 and Mingo in round 2 if he's there. But you don't know if those players are going to be there, right? When the run on receivers starts. So for me, I would take Quentin Johnston if Bijan is kind of off the board.
Yeah, and you never have to feel like Quentin Johnston has to develop into Mike Williams because they're not those same players. Like everyone just kind of sees this size profile, I guess, and they're like, okay, that's an X receiver, and that must be Mike Williams. But that's not really him. And the good thing with the Chargers is that if he goes there, let's say they can move on from Mike Williams next year, he's the odd man out next year. They have Josh Palmer who can take on some of those as well, or they can just find someone else in the draft who can be that sort of jump ball sort of guy. So not that you need a jump ball sort of guy, but if you need someone to try to fill that X role, Josh Palmer did do that last year, did it great against the Chiefs, like 106 yards, 2 touchdowns, whatever it was. So he can definitely do that. So Johnson, even next year, if they can move on from Mike Williams, will not have to be Mike Williams next year, nor should he ever be expected to. But as people are pointing out in the chat, the whole catching thing is a real problem.
Absolutely. I think it was Mina Kimes who said this on her podcast. It was like, if you could just take all the stuff before the catch and after the catch and you just freeze frame it, Quentin Johnston's Jamar Chase, baby. But the catch is the problem. I just think when you talk about the potential, I think a lot of that stuff is mechanical and can be fixed, right, by coaching versus like, you're not going to fix Zay Flowers being 5'9", 180. You're not going to fix Jordan Addison being 5'11", 170, right? Like, in terms of being slot-only players. And I think that's why a lot of people do have Quentin Johnston as wide receiver 1. If they do, is because of that projection to being a potential outside receiver. And because the athleticism is kind of unlike anything we've seen before. Someone asked in the chat, like, what is his pro comp? And, like, I don't really have an answer because we haven't really seen anyone who kind of, like, moves like him in terms of yak. But to me, just him on the outside, I do think with Justin Herbert, that could get pretty scary. And he doesn't have a 29.25 catch radius.
Yeah. Probably a really fun pick for the Chiefs at 31. I've seen that mocked there. Another really good one would be Hendon Hooker in the first round to the Kansas City Chiefs.
I don't condone what I wasn't involved in that pick, even though I think that would be hilarious.
I mean, yes, like if Patrick Mahomes does go down, it probably would be nice to have Hendon Hooker, I suppose. Although,
I mean, if Patrick Mahomes goes down, you might want a player who has 2 ACLs. I don't know, so.
Yeah, that was a thing. What from Sykes? What do you think the chances are we see Ekeler traded during the draft? I think he's a Charger personally. I think they're going to run him into the ground and then kick him out. That's what I think.
I don't think 0. I'll say 20, 25.
Oh, okay.
I do think it's possible. The thing is the extension thing, but like, if Ekeler like were to ever open it up and be like, I'm not looking for an extension anymore and I just want out, especially like an event, let's say the Chargers do draft Bijan, like I think that could intensify. I don't know if they run like a Bijan and Ekeler backfield next year, especially for someone who wants to enter free agency after having a number 1 role this year. And if Bijan's here, I don't know if that's the case. So I won't say 0, but I'll say like 20.
I think 20 is a little high for my liking. I think like I'd put it more like 5%, just because I think anyone who's traded on day 1 is getting traded for a first round pick, right? Like Marquise Brown or AJ Brown. I think like day 2, it's tricky. Like I'm not ruling it out. And that's why I think it's like 5%. Where it's like I think he only gets traded on day 2. And it would be amazing if they got day 2 comp for him, which again, there's no way they're getting day 2 comp, I think. Or I wouldn't say it's a non-zero chance, but it's close to 0. And like day 3, I just think teams are so busy with like trading up, trading down, like finding what players left, after 150 that like they can draft. And like, it's just tough to like really facilitate a trade during then. So I think it would happen during day 2, but even then, like the terms of the deal have to be done like today and the contract extension has to be done like today. So it's a good question. I think we probably see more happening after the draft and like heading into OTAs and training camp and things like that.
Yeah. We'll see what the Chargers end up doing. The range of possibilities for running back is so interesting because you could find Bijan at 21, but then that's probably not going to happen, but it could. And then you want to find guys to maybe replace Kelly, but you kind of feel good about him. But then you invested in Spiller. So do you want to see that through, or are you ready to move on? Like, I don't know where they'll go. They don't even have a returner right now, and none of their running backs are official returners. I don't think any of them got any shine at returner last year with Ficken. So I'm really curious to see where they go with running back, but it could be none at all. Hate to do this, but worst possible first round pick from Bolt Brett.
Keon White.
That was quick.
Yeah, isn't he? He's like 24, right? He's also like
he's
really
older.
young.
Yeah.
Older, converted tight end, I think. Yeah. Yeah, so if we're considering realistic possibilities, like worst pick, but also it's not the 200th player on the big board. Yeah, I think Musgrave would fall into there, even though I like him. I think Darnell Washington kind of falls into there, which again seems mean because I really like him. I just think Cansey I would both be unhappy with, and it wouldn't make any sense. And I get it. People love the pass rush. I totally get it. As someone who loves numbers and at least looking at what they do each play, his numbers per play are really good. And then you watch and you're just a bit worried. So I think he'll be really, really solid. I think even in the right scheme, he could be solid. But I have my worries. And if he went to Notre Dame, I promise you Chargers fans wouldn't want him. They would compare him to, they would be asking if he's the next Jerry Tillery, not Aaron Donald. But he went to Pittsburgh. So we're talking about Aaron Donald.
Yeah, I think, Cansey's an interesting one. I mean, I had my doubts about him, and you signed Morgan Fox to that role. Like, there's no reason to draft another pass rushing D lineman. I think for me, any offensive lineman would be a waste of a first round pick. Like, I don't care what anyone says. Like, you're not running 6 tight end sets or 6 O-line sets as an actual offense during the season. So any offensive lineman, I think, is a bad pick. And then, honestly, like any tight end not named, I wouldn't be happy with Mayer or Kincaid, but any tight end outside of that, I think would be the worst possible pick, just because you're betting on a huge development and they just can't have that. Like, if you're going to bet on a position where the development curve is already pretty slow, like, you need to take the most pro ready guy in a win now season. And that's Mayer and Kincaid. So I think anyone not named Mayer Kincaid would also fall into that category. And then I'm not going to say Bijan. I'm going to be good. Obviously the positional value, it matters to me a little bit more than I think some other people. Mm-hmm. I think it could be very exciting to see what he does on the field, but the whole, he's like generational. Like, I need to see it happen first on the field, because as much as the stats, the film back it up, we've seen generational players not pan out. So I think that plus the positional value I think matter a little bit, but I won't put him in that category.
Okay, good. Thank you for saving our dislike button from getting destroyed. But I do get that, though, because Steven likes him exceptionally more than Najee Harris. I do think he's better than Najee Harris, but I don't think there's like a huge gap between those two. And Najee certainly hasn't worked out. Now, he's played with a bad line, and he's basically had no quarterback his entire career. So it'd be very different if Bijan goes to the Chargers versus Najee to the Steelers. But there is that concern, right? And then I think Najee went, 24th in the draft too. So who knows there? Oh, look, Steven popping in to say hello to my favorite people. Can't wait for tomorrow. I'm assuming that's Steven. I didn't make that comment myself. So hello, Steven. Hope all is well with the family. Steven and his wife are at a funeral currently, or that was this morning. So wishing him and his family all the best through a really difficult time, but he'll be back tomorrow on the stream leading us, so I can just get back to making fart jokes and stuff like that on the side. If you guys see a comment you'd like to get to, I'd be happy to bring it up. Reggie, what's up, Reggie? How's it going? Reggie used to work with my fiance. Have any idea about how many hours we may be into the draft by the time the Chargers are on the clock? Trying to make sure I see the pick live. I mean, by this time,
sooner than 10 p.m. Eastern. So 7 Pacific.
So it starts at 5, but it really is 5:30 is when the first pick's announced. Probably.
Yeah. 10 to pick 21, but then you take away 3 minutes, 2 minutes. So maybe.
I mean, it's gonna be a full hour in until we're at 10. Mm-hmm. So and then they'll start getting a little bit faster, and then.
Yeah, sort of depends on trades. If someone resets the clock. I would say 8 is probably when the Chargers are picking. I'm planning on jumping on at 4:45, and we'll be here the whole darn time, and we'll have a bunch of guests. But yeah, I'd say 8. I think by this time tomorrow we'll know who their first round pick is. Although I'd love to not know who their first round pick is by this time, because that means they traded back
or traded for a player. No, I don't think they can do that.
Oh, okay. Hold on. So that's a little new one. So is there anybody have in mind, Arjun?
No, I no. Like they can't afford to trade for a player. They need these cheap contracts. I was just saying like that's the other option. And like I mean they did it with Mac last year, but I don't think there's anyone on the market who would fit that bill. And no, I wouldn't trade a first rounder for DeAndre Hopkins either.
No, gosh, no. I mean, there
Okay,
was a time that was really cool, but
yeah.
we're past that, I think.
I think I think my friend Tage put this out, but I think we see DeAndre Hopkins traded to the Ravens or Bills on day 2. That's like my
Mm.
take of the episode. So if that happens, uh, tweet about it and then tag me so I can retweet it.
Okay,
And take the
definitely.
credit for Tage's tweet.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I'll bleep his name out and all that sort of stuff and give you credit. So is that kind of like a Ravens and Bills wait to see who they get in round 1? If it doesn't work out, pull the trigger on Hopkins?
I think so. I think Ravens are you know, I think they're taking a cornerback. That's also one where like I've bet it like at pretty good odds, and now it's the favorite. And then with the Bills, I heard they liked Jordan Addison, right? I feel like you guys have heard that, right? Like the Bills like Addison, or am I just making that up?
No. I haven't seen it, but Steven keeps bringing it up, so I've heard it.
Yeah. So I think if Addison's gone, they could go like defensive line. I know they don't like Ed Oliver, so they could take like a Brian Breesy or a Mozzie Smith or something like that, or even like if I don't think they'd take a linebacker, but they could take a linebacker there. And then with the Ravens, I think they go corner. So if both of them pass on a receiver, like they could trade for Hopkins, I think.
Man,
What's Hopkins' cap hit this year?
If a team trades for him, I think the cap hit is 19 million.
Okay. It's not terrible. And then 34 million adding Odell. So
Yeah.
get those two together at the Ravens.
how are we feeling about trade backs? Because like Popper brought up, I think like 6 different trades or whatever, and it was kind of just like progressively one spot back at a time. Is there kind of a group you're looking at, or maybe a team you're looking at? I feel like if there's an offensive tackle there, the Bengals would love to go get them. Honestly, if for some reason May or Kincaid or both are on the board, I could see the Bengals moving up for one of those players, and I would personally give them the 21st pick for that. So is there kind of a team or a scenario you guys are looking at?
Please call Mickey Loomis. He can't help himself.
What was his quote? Like, I'm gonna call around today and find out or something.
He really can't help himself.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'm not getting my hopes up personally, just because Telesco's never done it, so there's no reason to think he's gonna do it. Honestly, like, I'd love for it to happen, but again, I have to see it first. Loomis would be great. I think that's a great range to get into that 29 area. I could see them trading up for a Kalijah Kancey. They've reportedly like really liked him and like brought him in for a lot of visits and done a lot of work on him. And they definitely need an interior defensive lineman, so I think they could do it. I would kind of rule out the Ravens and the Vikings. Like Kwesi, he's not going to trade up in the first round. Like I won't believe it until I see it. Ravens also trade back more than they trade down. I think Cowboys could be a trade up team if they really like a tight end, or say Bijan falls or something. Like, I don't know, like Jerry Jones could just pull the trigger. Trent Baalke, he's a wild card. Like, he could trade up. Joe Shane from the Giants, like the Bills, a lot of people think that they're a sharp team, but they actually trade up more than they trade down. And so Shane being from that Bills organization under Brandon Beane, they're another trade up team where if they like a receiver or they like a cornerback like a Deontay Banks or Joey Porter, I think they could be a team that trades up. And I've heard they're like really, really locking in on cornerback. So if they like Joey Porter more than Emmanuel Forbes, like a lot more, then I could see them trade up. So I think Giants and Saints would be my top 2, and then a wild card would be the Cowboys.
Yeah, I feel the same with Arjun with Telesco at this point. I don't think he's going to trade down unless he I think the board would have to play out in such a way where the Chargers just have no first round graded players by the time they get up, and I don't think that that's likely. So obviously we can't see what the Chargers board is, but that's kind of what would have to happen. And like if Bijan's there, I don't think they trade out of the pick. If Michael Mayer's there, I don't think they trade out of the pick. And then you get into some of the defensive players and edges that could be there too. So I think there's too many players that are going to be there that the Chargers would want for them to like really consider trading back to 27 or something. So
yeah, I think if they don't do it this year, I don't see when they're going to do it, honestly, unless next year's draft class is also this quote unquote weak. Because like this seems to be the one where like you should be trading back. Now, not that trading, if they don't trade back, it's not bad in a vacuum just like that. Like if somebody, like if Miles Murphy's there and we're complaining because they didn't trade back, that's ridiculous. Like that's the edge rusher you take. Of course, you stick and you pick, but yeah, the odds of them trading back.
I feel like it kind of goes both ways though, because it's like this is also a draft where everyone wants to trade back.
Exactly.
Right. Mm-hmm. So not everyone can. And so like if you were talking about like the last couple of years, then I think that talking about Telesco trading back in those circumstances maybe is a little bit more egregious, although they had more players that they needed with like Rashawn and Justin Herbert at premium positions. Mm-hmm. But yeah, in this one, I just think there's going to be too many teams that are going to try to trade back to the point where the Chargers might just be kind of odd man out there. But I think with the GM that they have, he's not a GM that is of that theory anyway. He traded 2 7ths to go get the 6th that he traded for Khalil Mack. So I think Tom Telesco's pretty dead set on his ideology.
Yeah. I feel like this is the draft where we're going to answer so many questions, even though we've had Telesco as a GM for so long. Like, are they going to change the way they evaluate wide receiver and draft those wide receivers? Are they going to trade back? Are they going to flip forward and start investing more in premium positions early on, where they did not last year until round 6? So, which ended up being, with 2 of their better players, 1 offensive lineman, 1 corner. So I guess Sawyer was a guard at the time, but
I still think relative to other drafts, the Chargers probably have a higher chance of trading back. Mm-hmm. But this draft alone, I still would think they have a higher chance of trading up than trading back. If I guess.
I mean, they shouldn't, right? And Arjun, will explode.
I would hate it.
He'll be at my house, and you will be able to hear him crying and screaming and throwing his phone at the TV. But I mean, based on history, I'm really curious if we get one of those Telesco move up in the seconds sort of things where you give up that 4th round pick and then move up. Like that's something I could see, because if Mingo's the guy, let's say, it sounds like everyone has him ranked like 50th or 49th or something, right? Not that that's how that always works, right? In terms of where you're drafted versus where you're ranked, but it almost seems like the Chargers are going to be like 3 spots away from getting him. And so I could see the Chargers moving up a little bit to secure someone like that. But again, like overall, honestly, I don't think the Chargers are taking a wide receiver until like round 3 at best. I think they're going to roll out the 3 they have. I think they're going to keep Guyton, obviously. They're going to find a returner somewhere, and then they're going to just draft 1 guy. And it'll be the 3rd round. Does anyone
remember where the Chargers traded up from to go get Melvin Gordon? Because that was
17 or 18.
They got to 15. I don't remember where they traded up from.
I think it was 17. I think they moved up 2 spots.
Yeah, and give up a 4th and then something else another year or something like that. We don't talk about that trade up. It is kind of amazing that he's only traded up for linebackers and running backs so far.
Yeah, I had Benjamin Albright tell me that Melvin Gordon was a hit. And I'm like, look, I understand he had some productive seasons, but when you factor in that the Chargers traded up for him and that final season where like they picked up his 5th-year option and he just sat out the first 2 games, like, no, it's not a hit. Like they didn't not re-signing him was a smart move, but when you trade up for that, like a running back in the 1st round, like they better be like a all-pro guy, like almost right away. And like he wasn't that. So I don't know. Mm-hmm. Benjamin Albright's been a privilege.
I think Albright has a couple more battles to fight before he gets back to your Melvin Gordon debate, Arjun.
I'm not trying to bring it up, honestly. I mean, I got enough shit to deal with the Bijan thing on Twitter. So but it's okay. I mean, I understand, like, I'll probably, like, the analytics people will always be the outlier in these cases, but I'm not too far in the weeds to admit that he's not a very fun player. And like all of the translatable stats I've put out on Twitter, like he shows up in the 90th percentile or better, except receiving, but like playing with Quinn Ewers and Xavier Worthy, like you're not going to get the ball a lot in the receiving game. So like, I like, he's a great player, and I think there's a very good chance he, plays well in the NFL. It's just the positional value thing. And I think, analytics will always care a little bit more about that than like non-analytics people.
Yeah, definitely. I'm still Team Bijan, but I understand the worry as well. Like if you take Bijan, you sure as shit need to be go drafting wide receiver and edge or corner your next like 5 picks or offensive tackle or something. Like you have to make it up later on. You can't go Bijan and then go running back, safety, D tackle. Like you just can't do that. Let's go with Brett's question next. Pick one draft you prefer: 6 offensive players and 1 defensive, or 6 defensive and 1 offensive.
Uh,
I'd go 6 defense, 1 offense, because I think offense is kind of already set. If you like leave everything alone, like they have starters, I think defense you just need to get more depth, and I think Herbert can still elevate some of the backups on the offense if necessary.
kind of depends on the order of how you make those picks. Like if you get 1 premium offensive position the first round and then just like keep building out from there, then I think that's fine. And then vice versa. Like if you were to get 1 premium defensive player and then take 6 offensive players, I don't know. I probably would go with 6 defensive and 1 offensive.
Yeah, 6 defensive, 1 offensive for me. Again, it depends on when. I hope it's not 6 defensive and then in the 6th, 7th round we're taking an offensive player like I don't know, Bryce Ford Wheaton or something. No offense. I just hope that doesn't come down to us taking 1 big wide receiver in the 7th round and that's it. But of course that'll happen. Telesco has yet to draft a receiver that I've watched. Now, he's only drafted 1. But yeah, yet to draft a receiver that I've actually watched and graded. I didn't watch Palmer, or I didn't grade him because his quarterback sucked. All right, guys, we're going to take like 3 more minutes of questions and we're going to get out of here. It's only 8:43 for me. It's like 3 weeks from now for Alex. That's how late it is. So let me know who they picked, Alex. I'm sure you already know by now. So we'll take any other questions. If you guys see one, bring it up. Or if you have something you want to talk about, let's do it. I don't know if there's any other like betting things or other team stuff you want to talk about. I'm all ears. Brandon, who's a member of the channel, favorite second day edge or defensive lineman? Depends on how you view them, I guess. I can't get Javon Dexter out of my head, though, for the Chargers taking him. He doesn't have the arm length, but the next best thing after arm length, I've been told, is height. He definitely has the height there, and he certainly can play the run very, very well, and was a higher recruit out of high school than Jalen Carter, which means he didn't translate it as well, but there's still the pedigree is there, right? He can be something. And frankly, I'm all about giving Jay Rodgers more players. Like he just keeps the line consistent. He's good at getting guys paid. It's been a while since he worked with him, but like Roy Robertson Harris just got paid. All these guys get paid, unless your name is Morgan Fox, which I do have a question about Fox. Do you think his contract and the way they view him and how they paid him and the fact that he technically was a backup to start the year sort of last year, do you think they're above drafting someone really in round 1 or 2 to play over him, especially if it's let's say it's Brazil from Clemson? Like, do you think his contract and maybe his play as well and his numbers, like I do think that they could potentially take someone to play over him?
I mean, he's on a 2-year deal, so I think they do see him as like a longer term starter. If it was a 1-year deal, I think that's a different thing. Like, I don't think, having him on a 1-year deal would have prevented them from taking a defensive lineman early. But I think 2 years is a little bit more of a commitment. And while the contract might be just a 1-year deal in reality where they can cut him after 1 and the dead cap isn't that high, I just think they've invested so much into this interior defensive line the past 2 years with 3 free agent signings, drafting Otito, obviously losing Tillery, that kind of takes away from the group, and like they still kind of need to add 1 more guy to the group this draft, but I don't think it's someone that they have to draft super highly. So my answer is no, I don't think.
Yeah, I think they could take like a tweener lineman on like day 3 or something, and maybe that player sort of gets to the dynamic of like Morgan Fox, won obviously the position battle last year, and that guy gets kind of slotted into like the Tillery role of just like, sort of being the like backup pass rusher, if you want to say that. So I think they could go for that, but probably not in round 1.
Yeah. All right, might as well close out with the most random question. Alex's sleeper running back this year. Now, it was Muhammad Ibrahim. I believe that has not.
It still is. I like him
Okay.
a lot, but he is older. Abanikanda is the guy. I mean, he's to me like if you were to take a day 3 running back, then that's the one I would kind of bet my life on.
Yeah, Kendra.
Well, Kendra a sleeper? Because like I feel like he's RB like 4 at this point. So
wasn't he Daniel Jeremiah's like RB4 or something? He was high up there for
my
him.
bad.
No, I mean consensus wise, he's like 120 something. Someone can tell me in the chat. But yeah, Daniel Jeremiah loves him. But yeah, I would not have watched him unless the Chargers didn't, if the Chargers didn't meet with him. And then Arjun pointed out the stats as well. Would be happy with him. I think Abanikanda is like a better RAS guy than a film guy, but the Chargers are so sorely lacking. And we said last year, I'd prefer either a pass catcher or a home run threat.
Yeah.
And I think the pass catcher part is Isaiah Spiller, but they never got to that. But they certainly don't have a home run hitter. I know Austin Ekeler had 2 big runs, which honestly surprises me, although he's not a slow running back. But they definitely need someone that's a home run hitter. And I think that someone like Abanikanda in this Chargers offense, with this offensive line, after they go Michael Mayer and I win money for betting on that one, be pretty good.
I think for me, it's just like if you're in like the 5th round or wherever you would kind of take Abanikanda at that point, it's like if you have a chance to basically get your kind of like version of Raheem Mostert, right? Like behind what this offensive line should be, getting Rashawn Slater back and having the structure that they want, like the run game would just kind of like drastically improve, having him as like a RB2, RB3, like home run hitter option, assuming Ekeler's back as the RB1 and they don't draft like a Bijan. So for me, it would be Abanikanda.
Yeah. All right.
Real quick.
Sorry.
Schrager just put out some stuff on Twitter. I think it could be worth just repeating real quick before we end. So he's saying some draft Eve stuff. As I've said for a week, both RBs will go in the first round. Gibbs somewhere 20 to 31. Bijan 8 to 31. I can see
8 to 31. Jeez.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I see Zay Flower, JSN, and Addison all going 10 to 20 range. Doesn't include 21, so 10 to 20. Kincaid and Mayer will both go 10 to 25 range. Laporta and Musgrave could sneak into first round. And then Emmanuel Forbes has a lot of fans in the league. Not that I think he's, kind of relevant to the Chargers, but you never know. So the receivers one is the most interesting, I think.
Yeah. So one more time. So it's JSN, Flowers, and Johnson.
Addison.
Oh, Addison, excuse me. Within the first 20 picks, which of course keeps the Chargers out of the running there. So you're probably buying the idea that
it never made sense to me that the media was just like, oh, we're going to get more running backs than wide receivers for like a week. That never made sense to me. Wide receiver is a premium position. And like, yeah, this isn't like your Chase Smith Waddle wide receiver class, but like, it's not that bad either. So to the point where you would be taking Jahmyr Gibbs like over the 3rd receiver. So never bought that. And obviously that makes more sense.
I mean, honestly, I'm not saying do this, but I mean, Gibbs would be higher on, I think, my board than some of the receivers if those 3 are gone. So, again, I would not. Please don't do that. Please don't take Gibbs at 21. Not a bad player. It's just like I can get behind it with Bijan, but as Arjun is shaking his head and saying right now, not there for Gibbs.
I don't know what to make of the Falcons at 8 with the Bijan stuff. I don't buy it as much because of what they would be paying Bijan at 8 and all of their like other needs. Not to mention like their running backs that they have aren't bad, and they have a lot of spots on their team that are bad. So I would probably take more of like a premium position player. But I don't know. I don't feel like the Eagles take him at 10 either. And then I think I feel like Bijan lands in that like somewhere in that 15 to 20 range is sort of what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, we'll go to the Pete Carroll Seahawks or Bijan Robinson just because that's on brand for some reason. Got to get another running back, right? When in doubt, take another running back. Enough. Hey, man, they crushed it last year, so who might have judged them at this point? I'd love to have the season that they had. or at least the way they feel about it. All right. Before I let you guys go, final prediction, even though I'll see you guys tomorrow. Who are the Chargers taking at 21 if they stay?
Michael Mayer.
Michael Mayer.
Michael Mayer. I agree as well. Doesn't mean that's our favorite, but if we're betting money on something, got to be him. Although last year I feel like I was betting money on Trevor Penning. Although I had no idea that Trey Pipkins would become a top 15 right tackle in the league, or tackle, I should say, in the league. So didn't expect that, but Michael Mayer just seems to fit. I think the Chargers want a player who's in their rotation for 5 years, builds a chemistry with Herbert and all that. So yeah, that's it for us, guys in the chat. Thank you for watching. Thanks for being here. We're going to be here tomorrow starting at 4:45. Steven's got a whole host of guests coming on. I've not met any of them, so I don't know. But I can't wait to meet them and then talk with Arjun, who will be here at my apartment, and then talk to Alex as well. So it's going to be a fun one. We'll see what happens. Hopefully there's more excited Zion Johnson type cheers than, I don't know, whatever else. If Trevor Penning were the pick last year. All right, guys, take care.